We're on. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, councillors. Welcome to this meeting of the Planning Committee. Before we start the actual agenda, firstly, I'd like to thank officers and Councillor Yeo for working on this layout, because I think it is a bit better than last time, and we'll see as the meeting progresses, but we've got microphones. And can I just let you all know, the microphones will be on all the time, so no rude asides that you think are in private, because they will be broadcast to the entire town. So so that was that, and then I need to read out the usual. I'd like to inform everyone present that this meeting will be recorded and broadcast live on the internet and will be available for repeat viewing on the council's website. You should be aware that the council is the data controller under the Data Protection Act. Data collected during a webcast will be retained in accordance with the council's published policy. The seating in the public gallery will not be filmed. Members of the public are only able to speak if they have registered their interest in accordance with the council's procedure rules. As chair, I have the discretion to adjourn the meeting in the event that there is disorderly conduct from councillors or members of the public, in accordance with Standing Orders 34 and 35. I can also terminate or suspend webcasting if the meeting in accordance with the webcasting protocol. Thank you very much. Which takes us on to the agenda. The first item is the minutes. Is everybody happy with those from last time? Thank you. And then declarations of interest. Yes.
Okay. I guess I'd like to declare an interest in item 10, Victoria Park Recreation Ground on predetermination.
And you're going to make a statement as ward councillor and then leave the room, yeah?
I would like to, yes, please. Thank you.
Any other declarations of interest? No? Okay, thank you. We then go on to questions. We have none. And then item 4 is potential for site visits. I guess you're introducing this as Richard's not able to be here.
Yes, thank you, Chair. When I be to report in your pack, we've got no additional sites that can be viewed to do a site visit on. The two that are in your reserve list, Wigan Mead and Tottenham Road, are still waiting on a conclusion to the negotiations on both of those sites. So it will be too soon to do a visit now. So if you show with us, we'll get advice action when we're ready to visit.
Councillor Davies, was it on that?
Yeah, I was just trying to. That was the one I was. That was the one I was going to mention about Great Brigham's, because obviously that's in my ward, and I think we're all keen to go and see that site. So it was really, I mean, you've explained why it's not coming forward, but we were sort of anxious at the soonest possible opportunity to get to see that one. So yeah, thanks.
Of course, as soon as we know, then we obviously, you know, everyone's interested to get these decisions made as soon as we can, as soon as they're ready to come with you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody?
Sorry, could you move the microphone nearer you in when you're speaking, Julie, please? That one's.
Okay, anybody else got any comments on site visits? No, in which case, thank you. Can we note that and move on to planning appeals on page 17?
Thank you, Chair. So it's in your report, you'll see that we've got appeals lodged listed for you, and that's the one we have lodged is against a display of illuminated purchase notes on Queen Victoria Street. Can you all hear me?
Yeah.
Maybe close enough.
You're all looking.
That's better.
Julie, why don't you put it this side, then it'll be facing them and rather than away.
I won't sing, honestly. And then we've also got a list of the appeals decided, and disappointed to see so many allowed in one batch. I'm hoping we're doing a monitoring report for 2024, SP24, to come to the next committee meeting. And over the year, it sort of evens out, but it's just, you know, it's disappointing to see them all together like that. So there are some interesting ones there. There is, I suppose the main item there's at the bottom of page 19 is the outline plan solution decision for Baston Court. I think what I can say is that officers have been considering what we should be doing with that appeal, and we're not in a position at the moment yet to come back to you with confirm the action we're taking. So if you could just bear with us, as soon as we're in a position to share that information with you, we will do. There is a I was reported on that one of the key appeals that Sam Henson was here to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you. All I was going to add was that I've got a date of felling now, so I'll be letting ward councillors know that date, and particularly because it's going to cause some disruption to access into Portway Close. So I'll be advising them how that's going to be dealt with.
Yeah, I think you were indicating, and then Councillor Horsley-Smith.
Thanks. Can you hear me? Yeah, so it's just about the Cromwell Road application, the 5G mast. I just know that from the amount of comments we had from residents and that we've made to our planning department, that I think the majority of residents will be happy with that application being, the appeal being refused.
Councillor Horsley-Smith.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to ask for a little bit more detail at some stage, could be in written form, about the Catesgrove appeal that was allowed. We actually, I think we turned this down partially on fairly late grounds that it didn't have enough 3-bedroomed properties. In fact, it didn't have any. So if I could have a little bit of detail on that, because I think it's got implications for future policy. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I also just say how disappointed I think we all are about the Scowers Lane, the fly through. So, oh, sorry to move it again. Disappointed that we are that we've lost that appeal, and I can only imagine that the inspector did not understand the nature of that green space in what is a fairly congested and busy area. And I know that Councillor Mark Keeping, who came and spoke to us when that was considered, I know he's very, very disappointed that the inspector hasn't taken the wider view here, but unfortunately it is what it is. So we'll no doubt have quite a difficult time when that's all being constructed on such a busy network of roads, but there we are. Anybody else? Yeah, Councillor Lane.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I was just wondering for the public and all the listeners, if Officer Williams could clarify the situation with the amount of appeals that we put forward, and what is the threshold before action is taken.
Well, the way we're measured on our performance on appeals is based on the number of appeals that are allowed against the number of total planning application decisions made. So unfortunately, we don't have that many appeals made over the year, but as a percentage of the total number of decisions we issue over the year, the idea is that you have to be less than 10% allowed. So that means that 10% of your decisions have been overturned. So previously, we've always been like 0% or 0.1, but it's been that sort of measure has been used. So we have had a few here. I don't anticipate that would put us at any risk of having any repercussions. I don't think it would get anywhere near the 10% threshold.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It was basically to put the information out there so that the public know. And I think as a planning authority, we do have a very good record on winning appeals. It's just we've had a glove on this, and just to agree with what Chair said about the Greg's appeal, and the loss of land for the loss of green space for the people that work right now. I think it's a very valued green space.
It's also worth pointing out, I think, that a couple of those appeals were enforcement appeals, and it's a slightly different way the decision is made on those. So it's not quite judging our judgment on an application. It's really whether the works should have been enforced against or not, rather than whether our decision making was correct or not. So it's something different.
Thank you.
Councillor Davis?
Thanks, Chair. Just to clarify, that 10% is of those refusals that are appealed, not of total refusals, is that right?
It's a decision.
Well, decision, so,
Application.
right, okay, got it. So even the ones that are not appealed, it's
Yes.
10% of all decisions.
Yes.
Thank you.
So I will be bringing, I just apologize, I was on leave, so I missed the opportunity to get down monitoring report to you this time. It will be coming to you in your May pack papers, and that's the whole year captured for you. So I've already seen what the figures are. I can't remember exactly what they are, but you'll be able to see them and chew over the stats in May.
Okay, thank you. Not seeing anybody else, so can we note those? And then look at the item 6, applications for prior approval on page 27.
I've nothing to add to this report.
Anybody want to say anything or ask any questions? Yes, can we note that then, please? And then item 7, the consultation on speeding up planning petition. Right.
Yes, so thank you, Chair. In your main agenda pack, we were still, well, there were many questions and we were still finding our answers. I've recommended answers to those questions for you. They are set out in your update pack. I suppose as a general theme, we are in disagreement with what is being proposed. You know, we like the way we work at Reading Borough Council. We like to negotiate on applications to arrive at the right outcome, and normally our customers, our applicants, are happy to do that because they want to also get a beneficial outcome. We're concerned that really by reducing the amount of time we need to deal with an application and taking away the ability to extend time will inevitably force us to be refusing applications when perhaps for a few more weeks or whatever we could actually come to a better outcome. So I don't think anyone's actually going to win out of that. And if the objective is to actually speed up development in an area, well, we do know that notwithstanding how many decisions we make, you know, developers don't always develop out the sites that we give permission for. So it won't achieve that outcome either. So generally our responses are negative, and you know, generally we feel it's been badly thought through, not being unkind to the authors of the consultation, but I think if you actually were working in the planning department and dealing with the applicants that we deal with, then they would appreciate that it's not just down to getting us to do things quicker. It's about, there's a lot more to it. And also when you bear in mind the amount of additional regulations and considerations we have to consider now compared to, say, when I was a planning officer starting out, it's a lot more complicated than that. And it's going to put an awful lot of pressure on applicants to, I suppose in one way, it may force people to be more clear to make sure that they've got everything in place so they can get an application through. But I think it's actually going to be more onerous for the applicant as well.
Thank you. Councillor Lem.
Yeah, I mean, where do I start with this? I support the officer's robust response to this consultation, as I do with the YPWA public response to the brownfield development consultation. I've said before about defending the integrity of the planning process, the very democratic decisions people in community that put into consultations, and sometimes I understand that the residents don't always feel that they're listened to, but you know, within the MPPF, it says that, you know, it's a democratic process and we should support sustainable development. The shifting sands of planning policy, you know, it's every other day, more burdens put onto the local planning authority, local councils, less money to do it. This apparently is going to be bringing more funds, but you know, this is just going to basically create planning by appeal. We've just had a glut of appeals. We will see we will see poorer planning decisions, you know, plan applications put forward. And I think it's something, this is the message for the next government coming in, because you know, this is going to be picked up by them, no matter what colour they are, red, blue, yellow, green, whatever. You know, I'm not being party political here. You know, this if we want to have good, sustainable development, we have to bring the public along with us. That is done through the planning process. And that's it. All I have to say. Oh, one more comment. The infrastructure levy, you know, and the wider remit where we can't focus it. We know what the knock on from that's going to be. It's going to impact on affordable housing. You know, it's swimming through treacle trying to get affordable housing sometimes, and this will only make things worse. So I am fully supportive of the robust response. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Yeo.
Can I echo Councillor Lang's comments? I think, I mean, I'm going to be quite short. Basically, continually altering planning regulations is just really not very helpful, and this doesn't get to what the sort of what the real issues are around what the planning process is. So just speeding up planning applications isn't going to change the dynamic. It's not the way that either the government or we want it to do. So that's my point. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Williams, you were next.
Thank you. Councillor Moore was indicating well before me.
Oh, was it? Oh, well,
Is that okay? Yeah, I know you can't.
That's first for everyone else, but that's okay.
You've got a different
Councillor
angle.
Moore, then you go first, then Councillor Williams. Then
Thank you very much. You couldn't see me because I was in the island of two other people.
Hopeful that we can get back in there
No, don't get conscious.
with all the stuff working properly. We might have a better layout so I can see you all at the same time. Right.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you, Chair. I mean, a lot of this comes down to the general concept that you can throw money at a problem and try to make things happen quicker, which is, again, as others have said, is a disregard for due process and actually doing things properly and actually giving proper care and attention to these things. Because once these developments are up and about, that's it, right? They're there. You know, you can't just throw money and say, build me my thing quicker, get me my permissions quicker. And which just seems to be such a Tory government thing, really. I'm really happy with the response, especially the answer to question 9, which is, it does say it suggests a lack of regard for democratic involvement with local residents and elected councillors, as 10 weeks gives little time for community engagement. As Councillor Lang said, residents may already assume that it's already a done deal and they're not listened to. This would just enforce that message that they're not going to be listened to, because then we're giving them even less time to contribute. In fact, we want to have more democracy of people be able to contribute towards planning decisions and try to let people know how they contribute in the decision-making process in the things that happen in their area, because things do matter, right? And even things happen on appeal, they need to understand how the whole thing works so they can feel like they're listened to, because we're here to represent them. We're not here on the side of developers, we're here on the side of the residents. So I fully agree with this, and the whole idea of it, I just think is poorly thought through, and is predicated entirely on that idea of just throwing money at something to make it quicker. So thank you very much for the very robust response.
Thank you, Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chair. I agree with what's been said, but I'll be slightly grumpy because we received this only yesterday evening, and we've had today to read it, and I have read through it. And two things occurred. Firstly, that I broadly agree with the responses, and secondly, that I have not had time to fully understand or consider these responses from our officers, but I trust our professional planning officers have done a good job with this response. But I think it was only a few weeks ago when the Tory government launched this consultation, closing 8 weeks later. So that closes next week. That is not enough time for a planning team which is already stretched to its limits to deliver proper responses that have come through elected members. We only meet every so often. It's the same for every local authority. I don't particularly know whether the Tory government are listening to the responses that come back. That would be a separate question. But if they are, they have not given us enough time, in my opinion. So I broadly support what our officers have done, and I trust their professional opinions. But I don't think we've had enough time to properly consider 34 separate questions and separate answers. So we go forward on trust, I think, Chair.
Okay, councillor Gavin.
Chair, we're in danger of all being in violent agreement here. I think what I would like to suggest, though, is that we could maybe strengthen some of the answers by adding some actual figures and data. So, for instance, when we talk about us having no control over whether a developer builds something out, then can we not quote how many houses we have approved to be built, but are still waiting to be built? So that will give an idea. We can't, we give planning permission, but we can't make them build them if they choose not to, and other such developments, because it isn't just housing. But if we could kind of strengthen some of those answers with some local data to support the broad arguments. So total agreement with the broad arguments. I just think they'll be stronger if we have a little bit of local data to go with that. Thank you.
I'll ask you to come back at the end on that. Councillor Lane.
I mean, as I said in my previous sort of like comment, it's because they're making policy on the hoof. They're making policy for political reasons, as we've had with the brownfield development stuff that's just come forward, and the high density urban development, as they call it. I know that the 20 most urban authorities in the country have put together a joint statement about this. We were due to go public, but obviously because of PERDA reasons, it was deemed sensible to hold back. But local planning authorities are pushing back against some of this ad hoc planning policy that's coming forward. If we are going to get the sustainable development and affordable housing, it has to be done properly, bringing the public along with us, and just inflicting these rule changes at the lectern every other week is not sustainable. So it's quite a strong comment for me, but I do feel very strongly about it.
Absolutely. Councillor Hornsby-Smith.
Make one additional point, Chair, which is that if it's a 10-week window in which to determine an application, if an application comes, if we have a meeting in week 2, for example, of a set 10-week period, get an application comes in week 2, we have a meeting in, let's say, week 7, but the next meeting isn't until after the 10-week period, then we have effectively not got 10 weeks, not even the 10 weeks that they're suggesting. We've only got about 5 weeks, which completely throws on its head all of the different priorities that we've got, especially if this is a major application. It's absolutely ridiculous, because then we would have to consult, get the feedback from the public, and make a decision based on the information that we've managed to collate over about 4 weeks. And I find that absolutely ridiculous. So I support what the officers are saying. Thank you, Chair.
Do you want to come back? Somebody else indicating? No. Do you want to come back on?
Yes.
Particularly the opportunity to put in something that emphasises just how many permissions are not built out.
Basically, you're suggesting that if we can provide any evidence to back up our answers, that would be, I think, beneficial. We can do that. We are able to see how many soft commitments we have. So that's our planning permissions that haven't been implemented as yet. So that may be possible for us to do it. We've only got until the 1st of May, though, to do our stats gathering. So I don't know how much we'll be able to do, but it's a good suggestion. And in terms of doing things or quick, we weren't allowed to extend time but we were given a bonus if we did deal with things in time. And I'm old enough and having dealt with applications long enough to know that even when we had that time frame, what we knew from our other authorities is that they would refuse an application rather than negotiate because of that time frame, that you've got 21 days to consult. That doesn't give you long then to consider the application. Bearing in mind it's not the only one you've got 30, 40, 50 others. They were just refusing for either failing to demonstrate, not giving the applicant maybe one chance to amend, and if they didn't amend it enough, well, that's what we're considering doing. If this does come in, we may have to consider that sort of harsh approach. And as I say, that's never been the way we've done it at Reading, and it's already been supported by all members. that they'd rather that we negotiate and get a better outcome for the town and for the developer, because at the end of the day, many of our developers are actually small businesses or whatever. They can't afford to keep on putting applications in and going to appeal. And I think that's why I've enjoyed working at Reading, because we negotiate rather than just knee jerk, no, not good enough, reject, sort of rubber stamping sort of approach. So, yeah.
Thank you. No, this is a backward step, to say the least, and lost count of just how many backward steps we've taken in terms of planning from this government. But yeah, anyway, let's submit it with, and I do take the point, but I think you also have to understand, Councillor Williams, that, you know, the office has only got sight of this, and we've had Easter in between, people on leave and all that. They've done their best, I would say, to come up with a good set of responses, and hopefully, if there's enough local authorities really jumping up and down, we might get some amendment, but don't hold my breath, really. Okay, so can we agree on that consultation response plus the suggested additional information, if we can get it, to be sent in? Thank you very much. And then item 8 is the proposed tree works to a churchyard tree in St Mary's Butts. Sarah.
Explained in the report, the Town and Country Planning Act 1990 requires applications for works to council owned or managed trees to be decided by a committee of the council, which is not responsible for managing the tree to which the application relates. The law also requires a public notice to be displayed for at least 21 days, giving details of the proposed works. A notice is placed on the tree on the 12th of April, and it will be left for the required period, i.e. until the 3rd of May. Thus far, no comments have been received. 2.1 and 2.2 of the report details the proposed tree works to the horse chestnut, which are in line with good arboricultural management. The proposed work is not considered to be harmful to the tree's future health, and it's reasonable in order to appropriately manage the tree. It's therefore recommended that the works are approved, subject to no substantive objections being received. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Rowland.
Yes, I just wanted to say that obviously I'm in support of this, and it's really kind of ironic that we're talking about a tree before a consultation period ends, which may be the very future that we're facing that we were just discussing. So yeah, but beyond that, obviously these trees are important, certainly in Abbey Ward, certainly in the Minster, and yeah, so thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? No, can we agree that then, please? Thank you very much. And that takes us on to the applications to be considered. And the first one is in King's Road, and Alison Amoa is going to introduce this. Oh. Did I say Alison? Sorry, I meant Steve.
You look so similar. The proposal seeks planning permission and listed building consent for the change of use of the building known as the Carbon Building, and also the adjacent or adjoining Highbridge House on King's Road from the current office uses to law courts to accommodate the county and family courts. It's considered that the proposals would have no unacceptable heritage impacts, and there would be no unacceptable impacts on neighbouring properties or adverse transport impacts following assessment by officers, including transport officers. An update report is included on page 15 of the update pack, which sets out amended conditions in respect to the CMS, the design of highway bollards, the BREEAM sustainability conditions, the reuse of bricks under the terms of the listed building consent, and the detailed specification of privacy films which are required as part of the operation of the court service. Officers also recommend, in addition to these written reports, that members delegate to the Assistant Director for Planning, Transport and Public Protection to make such minor changes to the conditions as may reasonably be required to issue the permission. And that's a standard approach. In fact, it's covered in Alison's update report, which will for the Silver Street application as well, isn't it? So it's something we've missed off, and we're just asking for delegated authority to make any sort of minor changes that might be needed just to issue the permission. So the proposals are recommended for approval, subject to the recommendation in the main agenda as amended by the update report, and with that additional delegation arrangement suggested. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Lang, is that you indicating?
Sorry, Chair. Yeah, quite prestigious, the courts relocating to there, I think is good. Lots of jobs, and obviously it's going to be a long-standing thing there, hopefully, the courts being there. My only, I'm happy with the delegated decision for minor alterations, but I noticed that the ESP, Employment and Skills Plan, has yet to be put together, finalised. You know, I'd like councillors, lead councillors to get some sight of it, because I'd like to see in this sort of prestigious industry, almost you could call it, couldn't you, the courts, you know, some decent jobs coming back to local people, and you know, some proper education and skills plan, something that can really benefit local people, maybe joining up with the university and stuff like that. I don't know, but not just an off-site contribution or something like that, if you know what I mean. So proper, because as it states, it's a user phase ESP. So, you know. Okay, thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Rowland.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I would concur with what Councillor Lang has stated in regards to the ESP, certainly, and just also would like to further, as a ward councillor, draw everyone's attention to the lovely listed building to a Highbridge House, and thank the officer for coming back in and making some additional wordings in regards to the brick storage and reuse and the privacy films on the front of that building. It's certainly a building that, if you look at it from a listed building standpoint, is just kind of really been shunted into a world of surrounding modern structures, but it is still quite charming, and I would urge everyone to take a walk back there. It's a very charming building, and so I'm really looking forward to the great benefits it's going to bring the town, but I'm glad that those issues have been addressed. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hornsby-Smith.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to make a couple of points really. To go with the recommendation, I wondered, given that if we're going to accept minor alterations to the conditions, there might be consideration in condition 7, which is about the parking arrangements, to make sure that there is electric vehicle infrastructure put in, and also there is a charging port there in compliance with policy. It's also set out in 722, 723, but there's no real mention of electric vehicle charging. I'd just like to make sure that we actually take that on board. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Not seeing anybody else. Can I see all those in favour?
Sorry, Chair, do you want to just check on that?
Yes.
Go back to the officer.
Well, I was assuming it was fairly straightforward.
I think.
Do you want to add something?
No, just in terms of so condition 17 will be altered in terms of to be determined in consultation with lead councillor, board members, chair, vice chair, and condition 7 should be altered where necessary to specifically refer to the requirement for an electric vehicle charging point as set out in the main report.
I'd also like to request that it's put to the developer that they should, if possible, put in the infrastructure to allow for more charging points than the current policy allows, which is 1 for every 10 spaces. But we know that within 5-10 years, there's going to be a requirement for possibly more. So it's more of a request that they bear that in mind as they put forward their final plans for the parking.
Yep. Okay. Right. Can I see all those in favour of granting this, including the slightly amended recommendations that were read out, particularly on the delegation? Thank you. That seems to be unanimous. Thank you very much. And that takes us on to item 10 on page 61. But I think, Councillor Rowland, you need to declare your interest, and you want. We normally, I've forgotten. We normally let the board councillor speak first and then get the officer.
Oh,
No, you do.
You want to do the introduction then, and then we'll ask Councillor Rowland to make her statement and leave the room.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So planning permission is sought for replacement of the current play equipment and playground and relocation of it within Victoria Rec Park. The existing playground is nearing the end of its viable use. It's located underneath a few mature lime trees, which are causing uplift of the hard standing, creating a trip hazard, and the equipment itself is near the end of its viable use. This area would be returned to its natural state with opportunities for planting. As a quick update as well, there is a typo in one of the conditions for the application, which states that 38 new trees will be planted. I don't think they could fit that many in there. The actual condition is for 9 new trees, not 38. The new playground would be moved further south, and as standard for playground applications, we don't know the details of the design of the play equipment. So what the applicant has said is once they have a planning decision, they go out to tender and then come back to the planning department with their decision on the play equipment. So this is to be secured via pre-commencement condition, so we can secure those details at a later date. The new playground will be closer to properties on Great Norley Street, but the minimum buffer distance for noise has been achieved. There is therefore minimal concern in relation to impact on residential amenity. Overall, the proposal is considered an improvement on the existing facilities and is therefore recommended for approval. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Rowan, do you want to go and sit in the
Yeah. Hello again.
hello?
I don't know if you can you hear me or?
That's working, yes. I
Yeah,
can hear
okay,
you.
brilliant, brilliant. Yes, I would just like to speak about my predetermination on this. The Victoria Park area is something that we as ward councillors have been working on for quite a period of time. Very positively with the neighborhood and the recent development of the Victoria Park Residents Association. Officers have been engaged with that association, and we have also, as ward councillors, been very much in favor of an improved playground in this area for some time. And the result of the work and the positive engagement, and again, you know, we were talking earlier about that lack of positive engagement. And yes, this has maybe taken a bit of time in development and working through with the residents exactly what they did want. But along every step, officers have engaged, councillors have been involved. Last year at the park party, I guess they have a summer park party, children were able to go and take a look and say, oh, I'd like a little of this, I'd like a little of that, on and on. So overall, very positive engagement. We have a neighborhood and a group of councillors, certainly from Abbey Ward, that are very much in favor of this going forward. Additionally, the biodiversity will be enhanced once again in consultation in line with what the Neighborhood and Residents Association wanted in terms of new trees, in terms of wildflower planting, and those kind of improvements to the park and the recreation area that will, I think, make it a greatly enhanced site and something very, very welcome in the neighborhood, also sitting near Civitas Academy. So that's certainly, I'm certainly in favor of it. I will leave it up to the judge and jury over here to make a determination on that. I'll be off over that way, and if someone could just get me for the next one. Thank you.
Thank you. Just wait for Councillor Rowland to get round the corner and then. Right. Anybody want to say anything or ask any questions? Councillor Lang.
Yep, I'll say a little comment, not predetermined in any way, but we were talking about the end of life for some of the equipment. But I've heard that if this application is successful, today that some of the equipment, the hexagonal cuboids, whatever they are, could be getting moved to South Reading for upcycling, as they call it. And we've had previous examples of some swings that were looking in a bit of a sorry state, repainted and done up and installed in one of our parks over there. So any equipment that is spare, benches, bins, anything like that, just send them south, and we'll clean them up and reuse them. And it's good for the environment, it's good for budgets, and it's good for everybody. So I will be supporting this application, and I'm glad to see the area getting a nice new park. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Seen anybody else? Did you want to just, no, I mean, it's down to parks to sort out.
Aye.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, can I see all those in favour of this application? Thank you very much. That's unanimous. Could somebody go and fetch? Thank you very much, Councillor Moore. Just wait for her to come back. Right, thank you. And then we go on to the final application, which is 40 Silver Street. And this really is Alison this time.
Can you hear me all right? The application site is a brownfield site on the western side of Silver Street, surrounded by residential use. There are some offices and a student development opposite. The site has been subject to a number of previous proposals for student housing, which were refused and dismissed at appeal, and this is documented within section 4 of the report. The original build-to-rent submission under this application comprised 2 buildings and a basement car park. The applicant subsequently removed the basement parking and made some other adjustments to the proposal, as documented in paragraph 2.9 of the main report. However, there were outstanding concerns from officers, as documented in paragraph 2.10, related principally to outlook, amenity space and relationship to existing residential units from a 2-building scheme. A further amended scheme was submitted, which removed the rear building, and following ongoing discussion, additional amendments were made to increase the distance to Platinum Apartments, which is to the north of the site, improve the parking and landscaping layouts, improve the mix, introduce defensible space to the rear ground floor units, and set the building back to enable on-site tree planting to the frontage. The final amended scheme before you, therefore, is for 23 build-to-rent units comprising 4 3-beds, 11 2-beds and 8 1-beds, a communal lounge, rear amenity space, landscaping, including street trees, and parking to the rear. It is considered that there would be some limited harm from the proposal in terms of daylight and sunlight with respect to the side-facing windows of Platinum Apartments, as set out in detail on pages 114 to 116 of your report. But the effect would be very similar to a previous approved residential scheme, which was for part of this site, which has subsequently lapsed. That was from 2015, as documented in the planning history. And the rooms that are affected also have front windows serving the same habitable spaces. The proposal would provide 26% affordable housing. So the section 106 that is recommended will include the usual deferred mechanism. And there would be slightly below the required housing mix in terms of the number of 3-bed units. However, these have been weighed against the benefits of the scheme, which are that it would provide additional housing and quite a good level of affordable housing in this edge of centre site. It's a sustainable location and it would utilise a previously developed site. There would be enhancements to the appearance of the site from street tree planting and frontage tree planting. It would include green roof, PV and other energy saving measures, as well as landscaping within the site and resulting ecological benefits. The proposal does represent a compromise to achieve an effective and efficient use while achieving a viable option to bring this vacant urban site back into use. The proposal is therefore recommended for approval, subject to the conditions and completion of a Section 106 legal agreement with the heads of terms as set out within the recommendation and as slightly amended in the update report with regard to delegation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Godwin.
To Alison for the report. I actually remember the previous applications, as I'm sure you do, for this site. Applications which represented a real overdevelopment of the site, that represented unsuitable building materials, and they were not difficult applications for us to refuse, as I recall, and indeed the inspector agreed with us on one of them. So when I saw this report and had a look at it, I have to say this for me represents a much, much better application and a much more suitable building in terms of scale, in terms of massing, and in terms of design. Actually, I like the kind of semi-mansard roofing and the stepping of the building, which I think is sympathetic, is different, but is sympathetic to the variety of buildings in Silver Street. Silver Street is not a uniform sort of street. It has lots of different sorts of development. So I think it represents a really good use of this site. It's not overdeveloped. When I think back, I think we were looking at 60 or 70 student studio flats at one time being crammed onto this site. So 23 homes represents a really good use of this site as far as I can see. And I'm delighted, although it's limited, I'm delighted to see that there is some open space, amenity space provided for residents. So I think it will create, well, it will be a huge improvement of the site, obviously, which is now derelict. It will provide homes. I think the 26% is on a small development is so close to 30% that I think we can say it's policy compliant, because it would actually be impossible for it to be exactly 30% on this occasion. So all in all, I think this is an application which I can fully support, and that's somebody who's seen a number of these applications coming through over the years. So thank you.
Councillor Lang.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Councillor Gowan, and thank you for detailed report. With me, slightly negative thing, we haven't got rent and affordable rent, but we have got affordable rent at 80%. What I am very pleased with, I think, is the first example I've seen of the council being given nominations for a build to rent scheme, you know, private build to rent, not just accepting our definition of key worker, but actually nominations. And I think that's a good thing. I don't know whether it does set precedent, I could be wrong, but it's the first example I've had that's come through the planning applications committee. Also with the covenant ending in 20 years, I read in there, during the clawback, it will be offered to the council to offer them for us for sale, to take them on as stock. I think these are all good things. The build to rent market is a fact of life. We're gonna have to live with it, and it is a product. It is an affordable product, and the fact that there is involvement from the council, whether that be by having management or ownership of some of properties on these developments, will help. And this is a smaller site with an example of that, but if we can get similar examples of this at a bigger scale on larger developments, it can only help. So I'm pleased with it for the fact it sets precedent. I think we've got some new stuff coming through in the local plan, which will strengthen us on the smaller developments. So yeah, we've now got key worker definition, which is in line, private sector in line with local authority. We've now got nominations on a private development for what in effect is private rent. And we've now got offers for sale back to the council through clawback agreements. So although not ideal, it's a foothold for the local authority into private build to rent. So I welcome it for that reason alone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sure.
I've got Councillor Creswell next.
Like it's been a very long journey on this development, and it really looks like a success for the approach of working with the developers and gradually edging towards a good solution, which I think what we have is a pretty good solution. I know in the images on page 133 and 134, there's a cyclist in front of the building cycling the wrong way down Silver Street. So I hope we're not promoting that. The cycle lane is in fact on the other side of the road going up the hill. One small concern, something to keep an eye on, is the street trees. And in the management of the street trees, we've got to look out for, as the trees mature, they might push traffic away to the left, particularly larger vehicles. So and so that there may be a danger to cyclists from that potentially. It's probably a minor issue, but it might be worth chatting to the green blue people about. We're working on that. I'm not saying that we should not do anything, but it's just something to be managed. And that's all. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Robinson.
Oh, I don't know if I can be heard. Bit of a frog in the throat today. I like this application. It certainly is a lot better than what we've seen presented before for this site. However, I do have a major concern. And yes, those of you that know me on this planning committee will understand when I say it's the parking provision. We've got a ratio of 0.39 spaces per unit. Given that one space is for disabled, one with an EV, and one would think that maybe EV, we're trying to promote electric car use, that one would be insufficient. But, you know, when we look at the parking standards and design SPD, one space per 1 to 2 bedrooms, we have 19 1 to 2 bedrooms, and we also have 4 3 bedrooms. Is 11 spaces sufficient for that? I believe it's wholly inadequate. And, you know, when you also look at the objections raised, one of the key ones, insufficient parking already, and more flats will lead to additional congestions and problems parking. That area already suffers with issues with free parking for residents. So is this, you know, adequate for what we are hoping for? In my opinion, it's not. So sadly, I will be voting against in this particular instance. Thank you.
I've got Councillor Williams next.
Just a few things, but although parking wasn't one of mine, but I think officers will come back on that one, won't they? I guess we might not be on PAC next year, so I thought, you know, better say something in case this is the last one. It's a shame that affordable housing hasn't quite reached 30, but as Councillor Gavin said, the maths doesn't always work out, and we have that deferred payment system in place as well. I'm very grateful to the planning officer and the natural environment officer on what seemed like an extraordinary long journey just in this report alone. Never mind what must have happened outside of this report. A really long journey to this becoming acceptable. So thank you for all that work. It's a contemporary design, and contrary to my normal contribution, I quite like it, like Councillor Gavin as well. I like this design. I think it works well. I think it'll work well in of itself and in its setting. The loss of daylight and sunlight isn't something to be dismissed, and I reread those sections carefully. But I read through the application, I read through the officer's report, and I made a bunch of notes. And then I read the officer's conclusion, and my notes were exactly the same. So about 8 years on PAC, and now I'm finally in sync with planning officers, because I agreed with that conclusion in its few paragraphs at the end completely, and I'm happy to support it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And got Councillor Leng indicating again. Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. Using Chair's discretion to let me come in again. It was, yeah, this could be my last pack as well, so I will say a comment. I am actually quite. I'm quite sympathetic to Councillor Robinson's thing around parking. I am, but as we know, planning is about balance and benefit to the wider community. I would like to see improved parking facilities. As Councillor Hornsby-Smith does about electrification, and I think that's the route we need to go. But I also think when we have key worker housing, that they should be allocated parking, because a lot of people are on night shifts. They can't always use public transport. So it's something that if I'm still around, I will be pushing for in the future, is allocated parking spaces for key workers. Definitely. Watch this space. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Hornsby-Smith.
Thank you, Chair. To a certain extent, Councillor Leng has BFIT free, whatever it is. What I wanted to say, which is just simply to add my standard thing, that if you've got the one particular bay that is an EV bay, please can we try and make sure that the infrastructure at least is there to allow for an expansion of those number of charging points. This is, I think, a positive application. It's obviously a lot of progress has been made. There are aspects of it that I'm not so keen on, but we'll take that up at another time. But I think generally this is a good use of the land, and I think councillors are right to say that this is an application that's worth support. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Davis.
Thank you, Chair. I wasn't going to speak, but I wanted to give the voice of balance on the parking issue. While I do support people's desire to have EV spaces, I'm all for that, and I support the application as a whole, obviously, as I feel like most other people do. A site, a development that is within walking distance of the town centre, walking distance of incredibly good communications and transport, right? Should we really be encouraging people, the same people who sometimes complain about congestion, traffic, it's hard to get around Reading, then want more parking spaces? The two things contradict each other, right? We are trying to persuade people to have alternative forms of transport, particularly where they are close to public transport networks, because we are trying to address issues around congestion, etc. And I think having more parking spaces is going to attract more vehicles, it's going to attract more congestion, not the other way around, I'm afraid.
Okay, thank you. Do you want to come back on any of that, Alison?
I'll have a go. So in terms of the build to rent, we have obviously had some other schemes, not lots. The most notable probably Station Hill, which is completely different scale. I accept that. And there was an issue with regard to cyclists and street trees. Are you suggesting that the trees would grow so far across the road that they would then impinge on cyclists?
If the trees grow out into the road, then buses and trucks might veer left a bit
to
avoid the trees.
Okay.
And potentially impinge on the cycle lane.
Yeah.
It would be something to manage rather than rule out planting trees, I think.
Okay, I mean, we can look at the particular type of species, and I can liaise with Sarah Hanson, who was here earlier. We've obviously talked about the trees for an extended period, so I'm hoping that kind of consideration has been given as well. But I will take that back, no problem. The other issue, obviously, about parking. So, as with all urban sites, and particularly edge of centre sites, it is a tricky balance, trying to balance all of those different policy requirements and needs. This site is, as has already been said, within walking distance of the centre. There's going to be quite a good cycle parking provision on site, as well as the actual car parking. Outside the site, as part of the Section 106, there will be a car club bay funded for, I think, for a period for 5 years. So that's another means for people, if they want to have access to vehicles, to actually use that car club. And obviously there are buses that go past that site. It's always a tricky balance, but Transport were obviously content in terms of the assessment of that particular type of site and that particular type of location. The only other issue was the EV. So that, again, we can look at the details of what comes back in on that. And actually the agent is here tonight, so he will have heard that firsthand. I think that was it, unless I've missed anything.
Okay, thank you very much, Alison. Right, can I see all those? Sorry, oh, sorry. We must get a better arrangement.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Apologies for the lateness in my intervention. I was getting to hear what officers said before I decided to intervene or not, so thank you for that. But I also share the hope of officers that the 40 secure parking bicycle parking spaces will encourage more residents to use bikes, but it does have to be recognised that not everybody is able to do so. And therefore, I think some of the issues around parking raised have been valid, but I am pleased that included in this proposal is a space for a car club, because I think that is the way to go in terms of balancing the need for cars and sustainable transport. So I'd just like to commend the inclusion of a car club space, and would like to see in the future more proposals, more designs coming forward with at least one, if not more, car club space.
Okay, thank you. Right, anybody else? No, in which case, can I see all those in favour of granting this application? And all those against? One, right. Thank you. That's the end of the meeting. But before you all go, can I just, well, apart from who's going to be here and who's not, and who's going to be on committee next year and who's not, there will be, as I'm sure some of you have been around for a while, remember, a requirement for training before the new committee starts its work. And although some of you have been on for a number of years, there will be probably some new members. So there will be training, which everybody's entitled to and encouraged to come to, on the evening of Tuesday, the 28th of May, which is the day before